Okay, hello, hi. First and foremost, apologize to say who, what, where. Okay, because I think when you sent it to me 4 days ago, I did mention that I can only take a look at this after the weekend, and surprisingly, I think I overestimated myself. Okay, so please pardon me. I'm an elderly, so so do give me a break. But anyway, let me just highlight a few key things that I need you to understand. Probably you may be a bit more concerned why you might not be able to get quite a number of score. For example, we all are looking for the A grade, K to a C to an A. But while I was reviewing both your case studies as well as your essays, uh, it's quite clear why A is a bit elusive for you. Okay, so before I start, maybe I want to reiterate, okay, and perhaps to the rest of those who are also looking at this video, I want to reiterate that how do you actually move from a how do you move actually from a K to a C to an A? So when we have K, right, we are talking about the demonstration of knowledge. So some of you, if you don't give me definition, so put it over here. If you don't give me definition, then how do you want me to how do you want me to assess that you have demonstration of some knowledge? So for quite a number of you, when you handle your essays, in the introduction, you forgot even the basic definition and the concepts that you're going to use. So if you move into this particular manner, you see a question, you just spam whatever comes to your mind, and obviously, it's unlikely that you are going to do very well. Now, the failure to achieve K suggests that even if I want to give you an A, an analysis score, I cannot because you did not fulfill the full requirement for analysis. Now, after the K, as you want to move to the application based on the preamble or based on the case study material, you must make some valid inference. Now, if you interpret wrongly, then in that case itself, I can mark you down for C, but I can still award you for your analysis accordingly. So for some students, if you apply wrongly, don't be too worried. It's just shifting from a A back to a C, right? You can still score maybe 60% or 70% out of that particular requirement. Okay, so my reminder to everyone is this. But of course, it would be best if you can make valid inferences and then you apply these relevant concepts onto contemporary issue. This is what we call C, right? That's why for some schools, they actually use this term cursory application, or for some schools itself, they are talking about how there are some application involved and there are some contextual appreciation of the context. So if you do have that, then naturally I'll be very keen to give you a C. Now, beyond that, as we move into the A, so if you have applied relevant concepts onto contemporary issues, and you also give the definition and you scale it up by giving me the necessary analysis. Now, I want people to take a look at this. We are looking at the coherent analysis. That means your analysis itself has to be very thorough, coherent and thorough. So if your analysis is like halfway there, then obviously I cannot give you the full analysis score, right? What do I mean by halfway there? Later when I review this person's work, say who, what, where, you can see what I meant by you did not follow through with your analysis. It was stopped there, and it's a pity because you have the knowledge, but you just stop there, and it's just a bit more. So I will also be giving you some recommendation on what are the topics that you may want to focus on and improve further, so that if you do choose questions belonging to that topic, it would be to your advantage. So you want to take note of that. Now, to begin with itself, I will now move very quickly into analyze your paper. So the first thing is, for example, when I was looking at this particular question, let me erase all this, otherwise none of you will see or even know what I'm talking about. Now, for example, you talk about the demand factor and the supply factor, and in this case, you might not have gotten a very high score. But I put a smiley face over here. This is just a one-time in misinterpretation of the context. So don't get too caught up with this. It's just one time. But I was looking at the rest of the analysis. The rest of the analysis is still fine. But a reminder, if you're going to give me a demand and supply question, I expect price adjustment process or price mechanism. Okay, so this is when if you want to bring your analysis to be very thorough, take a look at having some shortage, surplus, upward pressure on price, functions of prices, etc. Now, if you wonder why on earth am I being so mean, like later you can see I minus some mark because I think your school is a bit nice, and I happen to know one of your teacher there. Yeah, don't want to say who lah. Starts with starts with an S, and then the lady, and then surname is Tan. Anyway, I'm gonna continue. Now, moving with that, why do I mention that your analysis itself, it would be good for you to have the price mechanism? Or you may want to take a look at over here, right? Equipment price and quantity are determined by the interaction of demand and supply. I will mention this again when I review your essay. Secondly, itself, when you talk about how all these changes will affect the equilibrium, and when you have a miss or disequilibrium itself, notice Cambridge very top of the whole topic was on price mechanism. So you need to have that to build your analysis. Missing that, right, you're putting yourself in a very dangerous ground, right? So say who, what, where, maybe you want to take a look at that. Okay, but maybe because the marks is not very high, so we can still award you accordingly. But for 1C, definitely, you can see when the teacher mentioned or when your correction is definition of price floor, I put a frown, a sad face, and the answer is very clear cut. You did not quantify for the K. How on earth do you want me to give you a high C or a high A? Very difficult, right? So I think when I review this, I think you get a clearer understanding what is involved. Now, of course, you'll be wondering why after writing so much, right, you could be getting a very low mark. And my answer to you is your application is not it's decent. You can actually score a C for this, but your analysis itself, it's not on point. Now, I think for most schools, they should have informed you that for most demand and supply question, your R1, it's when you talk about shifts in demand, supply curve, etc., your price ceiling, price floor. But your R2, you must examine using elasticity concept. It is a requirement to achieve your R2. So when you talk about price ceiling, price floor, I didn't see any PED or PES. Again, I will be very concerned. So you could be copying this suggested answer, right? Because the school has covered with you, but you may not have been aware that actually R2 is a requirement that you need to bring in elasticity concept. Okay, so I would suggest that you may want to get yourself very familiar with the syllabus document. Okay, so that was the reason why I put my syllabus document as next to when I was reviewing your answer, because Cambridge is doing that nevertheless. Now I continue with the rest. So, but there was some K minus, some conceptual development issues. It could be due to the fact that maybe you are having some exam anxiety. It's a very common problem. 70% of all my students are having exam anxiety of varying degrees, of course. So when I see true cause and when I see negative externality, I will be a bit worried. Okay, so imperfect information is talking about when you're unaware of the true cost. That is then imperfect information. Externality is third party cost. They meant differently, right? If you don't believe me, right, I bring you to the syllabus document. They meant differently. Cambridge has put them into separate categories. For example, externalities is one category, information failure is another category. Did you see Cambridge putting them together and calling it N? No, it was a comma. It was clear cut, right? So try not to when you define certain concepts, be a bit more precise. Okay, and so this is something that you may want to take note of. Of course, when I was looking at the rest of your answer over here, when explaining negative externality, it was quite decent, and I can understand why your school will give you a C. Now, your analysis is fine, but I didn't see a diagram. Why for market failure question, we need a diagram? Clearly, if you look at the syllabus document under tools of analysis, do you notice they mention all these curves over here? All these curves. So if you don't have these curves, then you put yourself in a very disadvantaged situation. So even though when I was looking at your answer, right, you showed a lot of promise in a sense whereby I do see that you, in terms of content-wise, you don't have a major problem. In terms of application-wise, even for this question, in fact, I would say you're above average. right? But when it comes to the analysis, this is the one. So again, is it due to exam anxiety? Is it due to that? If so, then you may want to take note of that. Or maybe uh, whomever is your tutor, or maybe in school itself, no one drilled this in you that for analysis, I want to see this. Right? Maybe no one mentioned that to you. So if that is the case, I really encouraged you to use your syllabus document. It would have been one of your best friend, especially now that you are writing, moving very closely to the final days of A levels. So again, when I was grading the paper, it was C and plus C. Reason, your analysis did not go to the level which was required by the syllabus document. So you got penalized simply because of that. Okay. Of course, when I was marking this question, I was quite happy. Thank you for giving me some joy. I've discovered a new brand called Adidas. Okay, sorry for being savage, but I can see. So when students are making issues like this, why am I like quite happy? Because I get to discover that perhaps one of their leading problems could simply be just be exam anxiety. Exam anxiety can be somewhat managed. One, do regular time practice, right? So I would recommend you to try out more time practice. That can help you to manage your exam anxiety. And two, when you are practicing your time practice itself, don't set an expectation too high. Be very precise. For example, 5 minutes for an argument. And then once that is done, you review. And then after that, you move into 5 minutes of counter argument, antithesis, right? Depending on how your school would have used it, right? And then you do your review. Now, what happened if when you review the first part and you discover that you are actually getting incorrect? It is okay. You continue with the antithesis. My point is, you must learn how to work with negative feelings. So even if you don't feel secure, continue and make sure the next one can be done well, right? So that's how we move on with a paper. We don't get emotionally charged when handling a paper. That is actually crippling us, and it could actually cause us to fall prey to even more severe forms of exam anxiety, right? So I hope that maybe this is something that you may want to consider. Why would I recommend that? Because when I was looking at the rest of the answer itself, your answer actually was this quite nice. I was looking at things like you unfortunately use demand and supply analysis. I would have preferred ARAC approach, right? Because it's market structure. So because of that, right, I think overall your score got marked down. But when I was looking at the rest of the answer, right, your application is fine. It's just that you used the wrong analysis. Right. So if you are asking me what happened to your first case study, there were some parts whereby your analysis score wasn't very rigor. So you may want to take note of that. Again, for firms and decision questions, for anyone who is looking at this, again, bringing everyone back to the syllabus document. Also, notice it was all mentioned over here as analysis. So if you don't draw a market structure diagram, how on earth am I going to give you analysis score? Right? Typically for 5 marks and above, I highly recommend that you may want to have some diagrams here and there. Okay. And then when you talk about EOS or you talk about AR coming into some change, make sure you shift your AR curve accordingly or shift your AC curve accordingly. Now, back to who say what, right? I think that could be a issue when it comes to your content. Your AR/AC linking to diagram, right, seemed to be missing for quite a number of times. It seems to me that it is a persistent problem because later when I cover your essay with you, I don't see a confidence in tackling such question. So if that's the case, perhaps maybe the topic you want to review is your market structure or your firms and decision. Okay, because I was wondering why on earth am I not seeing a shift in your AR curve and AC curve, and it was persistent. All right. Now I move very quickly to case study 2. Okay, so let me erase all this. Okay, otherwise it will be quite confusing. Now for your case study 2 itself, right? I think generally there are some parts which maybe time management. That's why maybe you did not cover, or maybe your content for like circular flow, you're not very confident either. So if that's the case, it again is easily managed. Okay, so don't get too caught up, right? Even though yes, there is about less than 20 days to A levels, but manageable. You can do it, right? In my perspective, because your problem is not big. However, when moving on to some of the questions, right, there are a few things that to me is a concern. Number one, when you explain your answer itself, I don't see bracket extract 5 or extract 6. That is a concern. This means Cambridge can potentially mark down into your C. Also, don't put yourself in this kind of situation, especially so if you are pressed for time, because when you didn't handle the first part, I already knew you're hard pressed for time. That means when it comes to you fighting against time, your exam anxiety gets increasingly severe and you forgot having things like extract 5, extract 6. That is a danger that you're treading on a very dangerous ground. Okay. So a reminder, when you write your answer for case study, right? All of us will want to see things like from extract 5, it refers to this, things like that. And so therefore it refers to reason because you are trying to go back to the syllabus document, you are trying to apply relevant concepts on the contemporary issue, and you're also trying to make valid inferences. If you didn't refer to the extract or the specific, you didn't point out, right? Then of course I will mark you down for AO2 lah. That means your C again is missing. Okay. Continue with that. Okay, so I now move on to the next part. Now when it comes to things like affecting AD factor, my I give you a A minus over here. Why? Any AD shift must trigger K process, no matter what is the mark. Why? It's just like price adjustment process. It's going back to your ADAS analysis. You notice what was mentioned by Cambridge over here. It was mentioned clearly in this case how interaction of AD and AS determines equilibrium level of national output and general price level, how changes in components of AD can have a multiplied effect on national income. Cambridge mentioned over here. So if AD is triggered, right, I want to see K process. If your K process is somewhat missing, I'll be a bit worried. Also, K process includes, for example, increase in D, there's a depletion in inventories, and so therefore firms step up on hiring, and then workers see an increase in income, there's an increase in induced consumption, spurring the next round of spending and respending. I need to see or somewhere, but I don't see much in your answer. So that it to me is again is a concern. Many of my students or quite a number of even whomever has been sending in their essays to me, I noticed that their key process is pretty well done. So I would say this is something that you may want to focus on. It is doable, right? So just focus on your key process, right? Not very rigorous. And that to me is a concern. Right. But again, you notice we have identified your problems. So don't get too caught up with like, oh, I have so many things to study. You're fine. Just focus on whichever gaps you have and just work on that. I continue very quickly with the next one, and thankfully, and because I know your teacher, so I know the question paper. But anyway, I continue moving with that. For the rest of the answers itself, right, when I was just reviewing it, I was quite okay. There was some application. Okay, but this is a big problem. Okay. So for any student who is seeing this, right, you must understand what is called autonomous versus income induced or versus price induced. This is a must. Reason, now you talk about there's a fall in general price level. This fall in price itself suddenly triggered a shift in AD. This one a bit a, a bit worrying, So when you write your answer in this kind of format, then which is a component of AD, I will thankfully you cancel it but I think what your teacher is trying to highlight is after you cancel this, then you talk about how X minus M would have increased and AD increased. This is what we call price induced effect. Now, this to me is a concern. Why? Notice syllabus document, a distinction between autonomous and induced expenditure is required. Required, no, they didn't say that it's a knowledge lab. They say it's required. So what does that mean? That means they will really penalize you, right? If you do not get that right. Also, do get this correct. Okay, so income induced as well as price induced itself cannot shift your AD. Your AD is triggered by non-price factor and non-income factor. But side note, some students have a misconception. They say, "What about income tax?" Hello, income tax, no, it's a policy. The policy that triggered the change in income. So it's not the initial trigger, right? So always take note of the initial trigger. So income tax is not income induced. Reason, it is government induced. Right? So who changed income tax anyway? Clearly, right? So in this case, be a bit more mindful. Okay, so I continue with the rest. So you notice I minus 1 mark lah, because when I don't see K process and I see a misconception, right? Usually level marking will be so high out of 7, right? So a reminder, okay, please don't hit me. And actually, yeah, but I think I just want to be a bit frank and upfront, so at least you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now I move on to your essays. Essays, on the other hand, reveals quite a number of things. For example, when I was looking at your, I think I mentioned, right, there seems to be a perennial issue when it comes to you discussing AR/AC curve, and firms and decision. So I don't see AR shifting, I don't see AC shifting, despite you telling me subsequently telling me things like there's EOS, etc. Notice all your answer, no AR shift, no AC shift. How on earth do you want me to give you an A? Right? So that's why I talk about you may want to you are setting yourself up to score a C, right? Because you forgot to score an A over here. Okay, Ken? So make sure you talk about some diagrams change. Another thing for you to note is the fact that for evaluation, one of the quickest way to pump up your evaluation for firms and decision, because I feel that your firms and decision, generally your content is decent. You just lack analysis for certain key elements. And if you really want to pump up your evaluation, again, I bring you back to the syllabus document. What is meant by one of the biggest assumption that Cambridge has identified for firms and decision, and it is firms may pursue alternative objective. So typically when we evaluate, right, we want to evaluate that yes, there could be some positive outcome, but it also depends on whether are these strategies being used in the short run for certain aims. So if you can have that kind of discussion and you apply it to the context, I will be very willing to give you a very high score for evaluation. Oh, so do think of that. Do take note of that. Alternate. So this is meant by alternate aims of firms. But your demand and supply was a bit horrible. Reason, your introduction miss out all the K. Definition of demand, definition of supply. If you miss out that definition, how on earth do you want to give you the marks? Cambridge was quite clear cut. The market demand, market supply. Cambridge wanted to see changes in non-price determinant and how they cause shifts in your demand and supply curve. Why does determinants cause a shift? Because it affects willingness and ability. Aren't these in the definition? Correct. So if in your definition itself, right, if you miss out definition, then how on earth do I or will I understand that your supply curve will have shift? So because of your K missing, right, your C is therefore weak, and also therefore your A itself, right, to me, right, it's not well explained. And what, by the way, maybe I want to you to help to enlighten you. What does your teacher mention by this thing called not explain? Price adjustment process. Why is it missing? Right. So I think you might have chosen a bad question because you have quite a number of analysis for demand and supply missing. And again, it is a perennial problem, price mechanism at work. Okay, so do take note of that. I'll put a reminder for you over here, price mechanism. Again, just a bit more for you to study. Don't get too worried. I think overall you, you still show quite a fair bit of promise. Okay, yeah, so don't be too worried about that. Now I continue with the rest of your answer. And again, now you can see why, because if your K is missing, C is missing, then of course overall score will be very, very good in your it won't be in your favor. I was trying to be positive, but yeah, it won't be very positive in your manner, in your favor. The reason is because you are setting yourself up, right? And you just probably again exam anxiety, you spam this question. And when you spammed, you did not think clearly what was necessary in order for you to score an A, not A grade, analysis score. But for the rest itself, you talk about subsidy lah, etc. This was thankfully somewhat better. But a reminder, notice Cambridge has mentioned demand curve, supply curve. This means Cambridge is fascinated with diagrams. If your diagrams, right, you didn't even put down things like price or the market of the good, then how on earth do you want me to give you an A, right? Also, uh, uh, say who, what, where, you may want to take note of that. Okay, so I just to me, it's like you are persistently having all these little issue like mathematics or careless mistake, all these little issues, and it is actually preventing you to get an A, right? So I reminder on that. Finally, itself, I was looking at the rest of the answer. Rest of the answer was somewhat decent. The reason, to be honest, why you get a pretty decent score for this wasn't because it was analytical. You gain this mark because of scope. So I have to give you credit for the scope because you really wrote at length. You wrote a lot of policies. So Cambridge does award students according to scope, but it is analysis that they are after. Scope cannot bring you to a very high score. It brings you somewhere, but it doesn't bring a very high score. Okay, so a reminder. Yesterday I did some PDPA, and the rest is again when I talk about your AD shifting. Notice I mentioned K process. The rigor is a minus, A minus. Also, again your K process. Again, ADAS analysis. I will expect students to be at least know how to label and draw properly. It affects your A. And of course, I must remind everyone, general price level. Do you know why it is general price level? Do you know why I cannot say price? Like, why am I so petty about all this? It's not because I'm a petty person, which could be like because when you get a bit older, you can be quite petty. But the answer is simply because it was mandated by the syllabus document. Also, sometimes it's not because I want to be very mean to my students. Right, it's really because Cambridge has spelled out certain key things and they expect all this to be in your answer. Okay, can. And so when I was looking at the rest itself, right, again, you just have all these little issues here and there, and once again, it just keeps bringing down your score. And as much as I want to I want to award you accordingly, I can feel that you're really trying your best to write everything that you know because I can see effort. How do I know that? I look at things like your explanation of supply side policy and your other policies. You clearly have studied. It's just that you did not take into consideration how to scale from a C to an A. Also, I give you credit for the fact that you have studied, but just be a bit more mindful how to get that A, the analysis score. Okay, so to summarize, again, I was explaining to you that the key process for this is also not very rigorous. So to summarize itself, a few key things. I think you can continue to stick with your market structure, firms and decision. Not just be a bit mindful of your AR, AC curve. For market failure is something for you to consider. Just be a bit more mindful over how you explain the causes of market failure, as seen in your case study. Your demand and supply is a little bit troubling because I think I didn't even see definition at the start. And even price mechanism like a persistent problem, that to me itself is a big concern, right? So do take note of if you want to prepare or do you want to cover all your bases, I suggest you may want to relook at your price determination. Finally, your ADAS, I will need to see K process. I have not been able to assess your uh, international trade, right? But I think generally students should be quite okay. I think, right? I'm making an assumption over here. Okay, but based on whatever I've reviewed thus far, I hope that at least you gain some insights over what you should be focusing on. And from now onwards, whenever you're doing your econs, I highly recommend you to use your um, syllabus document. All right. Okay. So I think thank you so much for sending it to me. I think I had a good laugh because of Adidas. Okay. So, and if you do have any questions, just feel free to just use the chat function and just chat back to me. Right. And I think that's it. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a good day ahead. Okay. Bye bye.